just the one. Yeah, that was my, yeah. It's,
Well, where does he visit? I've seen him all over the place. Is he a director yet? Oh, he's very upset about that. He was gonna direct. Oh yeah, that's right. He was when promotions came out like November, December. He was ranting me about it. I'm sure he's gonna be next. Yeah. Are you gonna get director? No, why not? This team is pretty small. Here. Last year didn't put anything down. I got two ones. To me, that's upset. Didn't get any money else on it? Oh, fish.
Jerome. Is it Jerome?
No, I'll email it to you.
Okay, yeah.
Just show you how much requests I got. There's about 20, 25 woodland. It's supposed to be here. Also, what do you got? Should be two. Still, right?
Yeah.
It's allowed.
Did you get connected?
Yeah. Just emailing you.
Okay.
You do not.
Mine was terrible too.
Hey, I had it too.
What's the tablet for?
I know.
I'm not putting it back in the box.
Eventually.
Uh-uh. Because he was really refreshing. He was really washing. And there's some really fun too.
I think it's sending you an invite right now.
All right.
So can you open up Skype for Business? I just want to make sure that it's going to connect.
It usually works well.
Okay. What's this Geos? Is it the
GOAS.
Geos? Cool. see an invitation?
No, not yet. Yes. Should I just email to my Gmail? Maybe that is faster.
Okay, you should have gotten an invite in your email.
Oh yeah, I got it.
Cool. All right. Did it allow you to join?
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, cool. Okay, welcome everybody. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Brett Berchtold. I am Director of Experience Marketing with Rounded Cube, and we host these meetups. This is a Sitecore User Group Meetup, if you didn't know already. But we host these meetups once a month. So for you guys that are new, happen once a month, and they're going to rotate topics from technical 1 month, and then the next month it's going to be more business and marketing type of content. Okay, so thanks for joining. So we've gotten introductions and housekeeping a little out of the way. We're going to 2 topics today. So practical machine learning use cases in Sitecore is going to be presented by Marco Tana, CEO of Rounded Cube and Sitecore architect. And our introduction to Sitecore JavaScript Services is going to be presented by Jeroen. Is that right? Jeroen de Groot, right? Okay, if I'm not going to do the whole Groot joke and stuff like that, right? So Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, come on, you know the Guardians of the Galaxy. Right? Okay, cool.
The highest grossing ones are like one person maybe not seen it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. We are live streaming this on YouTube today, so the live stream will be archived, and we'll also have a recording of the live stream. So if you have any issue with recording or live streaming, just raise your hand. Okay, good. But I'm going to be over here kind of driving the ship from that side of things, and then I'll let you guys do your magic with the presentation. So, all right. Up next, Marco Tana.
Is that on?
I shared the link to him. Yeah, we're going to switch over.
All right. I was hoping for more people today, but people signed up, but they never show up. Not all of them show up, but all right. So we're going to touch on a little bit about
Let me interrupt you for just a second.
Oh.
There you go. Thanks. Yep.
About cognitive services from Microsoft and how we can actually use it within Sitecore. Sitecore has this Sitecore Cortex, which is their own machine learning, AI portion that they want to do, which is going to be available on a subscription basis eventually on premise and those kind of things. But I don't know if it's fully available yet. I don't think it is yet. There's been experiments on there, but you don't really have to wait for that to actually start using AI for Sitecore. So obviously there's a lot of different applications for it, but for today, we're going to focus on a specific one from the cognitive services, which is actually the language portion. So for Microsoft, they have several offerings that are out of the box. So Microsoft actually has this I would call the prepackaged set of AI tools that they have, but then they also have the Studio, the Azure Studio for machine learning, basically to where you can actually train, put your own models and those kind of things, and actually have an output and this kind of stuff. So this, to me, are kind of built on top of that, the Studio. So if you want more specific things, let's say, which like the XDB stuff, and you want to create your own models and this kind of thing, you're going to have to go through the Studio. But for today, we're going to focus on the language piece, just kind of a simple application to see how we can use Microsoft Cognitive Services. So to start off, obviously, we're going to need an API key from Microsoft. So it's a free Azure subscription, so you go in there and grab one. And inside the portal, it has a lot of stuff, and one of them is called Cognitive Services Tax Analytics, and I will show that a little bit. And then obviously you'll need to get the API key. The document is pretty good, and also they currently have 2 ways for you to consume the services. Obviously you can consume it directly, or you can use the SDK. The SDK right now is actually on GitHub, so you can see the code and those kind of stuff. But all it does is really just calling the web services. So it's currently in preview, but you can actually go ahead and grab it if you want to, and it works. And all it does is really just kind of encapsulate what all the different entities and those kind of things that you'll need to talk to the services. Okay. So for our purposes, our sample application will be using the Text Analytics API. What it does is basically, if you have text, it does some analytics on it. It allows you to see sentiments, to see if what was written is positive or if it's negative. That's all it does, what sentiments does. In a percentage level. So for example, if you have a forum or something like that, and you kind of want to auto-moderate that, and if you want to say, or if let's say you're a company and you just want to see all positive reviews from Travelocity or something like that, you want to consume that, then you could push it to the cognitive services and to that text analytics, and if it has, let's say your tolerance is 75% good, then you can just grab those reviews that are 75% without even you actually looking at the reviews. So that's one application for the sentiments piece. Then key phrases, those are our obvious metadata kind of stuff, if you guys want to use that, or auto taxonomy that you could use if you want to do that. So that's the key phrases piece. We'll actually be focused on the key phrases, but you'll see a little bit on the sentiments just for example. We're going to use Habitat. So if you have not used Habitat, I hope you do, because that's kind of where Sitecore is moving to. In fact, SXA, it mimics that, what is created on Habitat. So, but it's been ported to Sitecore 9 on my instance, and we'll use that so that you guys can see kind of a little bit that's you're familiar with. We'll be using the page content module in there, extend that one so you can use the whatever the output is from the Text Analytics API. And then we'll create a new AI Foundation module to just kind of be basically that's the SDK, so that we can start using the text analytics and we can add more other stuff in there that's coming from the cognitive services from Microsoft. So, and the first one on that foundation module would be the text analytics service. Okay, so just to give an overview of what the app would look like. So we have our Sitecore content in here. Someone requests a page. Sitecore content obviously passes the content to Sitecore rendering, but at the same time, in this Sitecore rendering, it's also rendering some, let's say, categories or some keywords or anything like that. So what happens is that during the rendering, it actually goes to cognitive services, gives the body content of that particular page, and then comes back to the Sitecore rendering, and then just grabs those key phrases, and then it shows it to the user. So in real time. So that's kind of a very simplistic use of this particular AI. Okay? Any question? I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So, all right. So the solution is, obviously, we'll create a new foundation module. We'll call it sitecore.foundation.ai. So it's going to be a generic one. One of them would be the text analytics service that we'll create. We'll reference as I said earlier, you can do it two ways. You can actually grab the code, or you can do the SDK. I think it's available on NuGet as a preview. So make sure you click on preview if you guys are using NPM. And we'll create a service class, which is basically just going to expose what we want our feature modules in Habitat terms could use, which would be the text analytics service, and we'll put that into either dependency injection, or we can just use it directly if you want to. And then obviously use the service class in the page content feature module. Okay? So, all right, so we're going to do that and show you guys the code. Obviously, I won't do it from scratch, but we'll see what I have in here. So first things first, so the site is obviously for, I guess it's going to go through that. So that's the main area for the Microsoft Cognitive websites. As you can see, you can try it for free, get an Azure account for free. And once you're in there, as I said, I was going to show you what it looks like when you create to prep for this. Underneath here, I have cognitive services. Kind of hard to read. There's a lot of services in Azure. I just kind of made that so that it's a favorite. But in here, it has the list of API keys that I have, that I created. So I just named it called Text Analytics Habitat 9. Let's see if I can zoom that in a little bit here. Okay. And in there, if you click on that, it lets you have a lot of options in there, and even has references to different things that you could, if you're trying it out. But the API keys are up there. And it actually generates 2 of them, but you only need 1, just for your own purpose. So anyway, that's the key that we'll need to put into our code. Okay? All right. So what we're trying to do if I get there is to actually output when it comes up. I click on identity, so it's kind of hard to see. Okay. So in here you have, keep going. Okay. In here you have, for this example, we're just passing to the to text analytics just a summary here. So it just says 50%. It's not very good text or anything like that. But here, this is actually generated coming back from Cognitive Services. So yeah, obviously I'm not moderating any of this. It's just coming back that this particular sentence or whatever has things like organizational identity, identity module, website, of course, line height. I probably did not remove my my span tags or whatever. But yeah, so you can kind of see it does come back with some good key phrases. We'll have a better example of this later, but essentially what we're just trying to do is do this in our application, okay? All right. All right, so first things first, since it's a little slow, all right, it's kind of hard to see, but is everyone familiar with Habitat, the solution, at least a little bit? But in here, I created a new folder called Artificial Intelligence. It's just called Sitecore Foundation.ai in here. What I did for my purpose, I went ahead and grabbed the actual code from GitHub, which is basically the SDK, and just go ahead and put them in here so that I don't have to worry about if it ever changed. So in here are just error handling stuff that they created and those kind of stuff. But the main piece that we have to create is when it comes up, is our text analytics service. Okay, so it just has the Azure region API key. That's the API key. Azure. If you guys have worked with Azure, it kind of requires you what part, West US. That's where it's going to be served. So it kind of requires those. But so I have get sentiments. Oops. It's really pretty simple. Where is my client? So first of all, we need to create a client, which basically talks to the cognitive services, and let's see if it comes up. The text analyst API, that's just the SDK piece. Pass it the region and the API key, and you have a client. I mean, that's as simple as you can get. And once you have that, once you have a client, you can start using you can basically start using the different the two methods that they provide APIs. So the sentiment piece, and it requires a sentiment input. They're called multi-language batch input. There's another option for that to where you only pass one, but this one, since the APIs actually, you can put different languages and those kind of things. So, and you can actually pass multiple inputs. That you can pass a batch of text and gives you the different sentiments for each one. So let's say you have 20 reviews that you want to pass, so you don't call it one at a time. You can pass all 20 at a time, and then grab it, and then just grab the top 5 if you want. So you can do that. So that's that piece, and so that's the sentiment one. And then the next one is the key phrases. I kind of simplified how to do key phrases. I created another function here to where the text to analyze, the count of how many key phrases I want returned, obviously. So to do that, you need what's called the multi-language input, so it's similar to what we had up there. And all we do is really, get key phrases. Let's go there, which is really the one that calls the API. Once it's done, so this was getting called, and all it's doing is get is key phrases. That's all it is. I mean, it's really simple, just to be able to start talking to the cognitive services, the text analytics API. So what do we do with that? So the next thing, so that's all on foundation area of the solution. So obviously, if you want to expose more services, like for vision or something like that, let's say you're trying to do analyze pictures to make sure they're not pornographic or anything like that, then you can use the Vision API and create one under the foundation. Then you can start using it in your features module if you want to. So basically, that's kind of like the following the Habitat way. So once I have my service, I can go ahead and start using it in my page content. And really, this is very simple. All I do is I go to my CHTML. I instantiate my service. I give it the context items content, which is summary for this point or body or whichever, and then it just comes back with some data from. Let's see. So this piece is just trying to figure out what to give to the service. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I'm calling get sentiments. I'm passing it the text to analyze, which is I think I did was the body. It comes back with some results. I think it's this one, right? Oh, so the results here, and then I have, and then I get the score. So this is the results for the sentiment. So, and it comes back with just the score and then the value. So these documents refer to how many text you provided. So as I said earlier, if you want to pass 10 reviews to get analyzed, then there will be multiple documents here, which has its own score, okay? And then you can start figuring out what you want to grab in terms of those sentiments that you get. So the other piece is obviously the actual list of key phrases. Let me see where they are. Sorry. Okay. So it was actually above it. Okay. So here's the get key phrases that we said earlier. We're using the actual overload that's passing the multi-language batch input. Comes back with a result. And I know I just passed one, so I just have document 0. Obviously, you can loop through that, and then just all the key phrases. And then these are the ones that you see on the little badge that you see. So very simple, right? So it's very simple application of using the service, but you can kind of think of other ways of start using it. So we've actually used it also for creating, well, one way to enhance this is obviously make it into a service. So it's always just available on dependency injection. So Sitecore's way of dependency injection, you just, for a purpose of Habitat, you just make sure it has the word foundation in it. If you don't, then you'll need to either register it somehow. But the other way of start using this is you can actually use it for your authors. So what we did is actually have an item save handler. So for metadata purposes, so let's see. So in Foundation, there is already a metadata when it comes up. There's already a metadata project, feature project. And in there, it's just like your keywords and those kind of things. But it also shows, it also allows you to have SEO custom keys, custom metadata, right? So what we did is actually start using that custom metadata, and that's actually here. Let's see if I can show. So at the bottom, on any page that has metadata, it has the SEO custom metadata. So we went ahead and just thought, okay, you know what? We'll just go ahead and use that for authors if they want to use that one for to moderate what kind of keywords that the AI would come back with. So we created an item save handler. That's all we did. And then all it does, the handler basically just calls the AI, gives it the body that that's being saved, comes back and update this field. So if I just do, so the modules page does not have much content, doesn't look like. So I'll go to a page that has some content. Ignore my dog. He likes Sitecore, so it's okay. Let me see if there's any body on this one. That doesn't. I'm just going to look for news content here. Come on.
Sorry.
All right, it looks like news. And let's see if this works on this one. So here's the metadata area. Because I don't think we supported the news yet, so sorry about that. All right, so I'm just going to the news page. Let's see. Let me see if I can get there. All right, so I'm just going to the news page. There's not much content in there, unfortunately. But if I go to the news content item, and it comes back up. Okay, so I'm showing that again, and if I click save, it's supposed to go to the cognitive services, update the custom metadata, and now I have some tags. Now I can go ahead and review it. If I want to use them, then I can use them. But it's at least a good way to start getting some keywords and metadata stuff. Okay. So obviously, the cognitive services are all trained by Microsoft. So obviously, it's not for your own purpose on your own industry and those kind of things. So you can't really train it yourself. So there is that limitation. So you have to be careful in some of that. So if you want key phrases that are more specific to your industry, you're going to have to do that a little bit differently. You may have to go through the studio way to start using your own jargons and stuff like that. But essentially, that's really it, how to just use some simple AI into Sitecore without really putting too much effort in it. So, okay? Any question? No? I think I'm done with that piece. And really, I just kind of want to do a quick review. keep going. And I just kind of want to point out some things. That's an enhancement, what I kind of mentioned earlier. But some possible applications you can use this. I know that are coming directly from Cognitive Service without really even doing more your own custom stuff. You can create a chat bot already if you want to. They have a Q&A maker, and all it does is really go through your website, and it creates a Q&A. So let's say you have a chat bot, and the user asks a question. It could actually go ahead and go through your content and gives them a link, and then it goes to your content instead of a real Q&A. So that's one way of doing it. You can use the translator text API. You can also auto-moderate forums, tweets. We all use that, and other user-generated posts, including even images and videos if you want to. So they have the content moderator that goes through the different videos and images. There's the text analytics, which is basically the sentiment if you guys want to use that. You can automate follow-up actions based on user input on forms. So for example, if they're on a form and they say, hey, I just want to get some pricing information, blah, 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 they provide you an email address. Instead of you actually going through that and reading it, and if you have a kind of contained response to that, you can use Lewis, which is the language understanding something services, intelligence services. So all it does is actually figure out what's being said, and it comes back with the intent. So at that point, Lewis says that the user wants to get a pricing info. So you have that somewhere in your code or anything like that. Or you can probably even use Sitecore's rules engine if you want to, and then it sends an email to that user on its own. So you can do those kind of things. And you can also create an Alexa app. We've created an Alexa app that just, all it does is comes back with, hey, what's the current news on this website? And it comes back, hey, it starts talking to you. So you can do that. You can even have it to where you can manage the intents available in Sitecore instead of hard coding them in Alexa. If you've developed in Alexa, you kind of have to, part of that is to hard code intents. So if you use Alexa as a user, you say, Alexa, what's the weather today? The intent is to know the weather, obviously. But if it's specific to your site, you might want to say, hey, Alexa, open habitat or whatever. And then in the habitat, that would be the scope at this point. So any other commands that you tell it, you say, what's the current news? Then it will just be the current news for that habitat website. So you can kind of expand that to for like e-commerce, to where in Alexa you can actually put your user and password and tie in your Alexa to a website using your user and password, so that now you can use Alexa to start, Alexa, open Habitat web store. Let's just say that, and what's the current specials or something like that, and then you can actually use Lewis, which is that, to know what the intent is. They want to know what the specials are, current specials, and you can use Bing speech to kind of translate the spoken word into text, and then that text is fed into Lewis. That intent is fed into Sitecore. Sitecore uses rules engine. Rules engine comes back with stuff. Cool stuff. But you can do it, and these are all provided to you from the Microsoft Cognitive Services. Okay? All right. Thank you. All right, can I stop sharing?
Yes.
No.
Okay. You're up.
You just put this in.
And
Well, he's good as Dan.
just run the presentation and then I'll.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. You can put this on your shirt right there, and this just goes in the pocket. That way you don't trip over it.
Right.
And then I'll go ahead and make you presenter on Skype for Business, and then I'll share it up there.
Sure.
Yep.
You want to just start. Grab the slides.
Hold on just one second.
Sure.
I'll get you going here. Presenter. Make a presenter. Okay, you should have control.
Awesome.
Sorry for the delay.
No worries.
It's weird. There we go.
All right. Welcome everybody. So I'm Jeroen de Groot. I'm a Sitecore architect at Avanade. I've been working with ASP.NET for about 10 years, in the last 5 years with Sitecore as well. So I've a link to my Sitecore blog here. So today we're going to talk about JSS, the Sitecore JavaScript Services. But before I started going into JSS, I wanted to just talk about Headless in general, because I heard recently about using Sightless as a headless CMS, right? It is super popular recently. So there's a few different approaches that you can use in order to use Sitecore as a headless CMS. But before that, like I just want to discuss, hey, what is headless, right? So headless is an architecture that decouples the content from its presentation, right? So you can just use Sitecore CMS, create content there, consume it different ways, right? Maybe you have a site as well as a mobile app, right? When you just do Sitecore and ASP.NET, you're never going to be able to use that in a mobile app, for example, right? Like you might have other channels that you're presenting your content. Like for example, an Alexa app, right? Don't have any UI there either. So there is so many channels these days that you want to think about where using headless CMS is a very good option there. So I already went in this slide a little bit, right? Oh, still refreshing. No, stuck, I think. Well, either way, that's all right.
Is it just, it was taking a little bit for you whenever it was
Not
switching
this
over?
one, though.
Not that side?
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry about that. Hold on one second. I'm just gonna see why it's.
You see it, I can't even see it.
Do it. Stop. You're okay at the Jim. And
Did it update in the meeting?
No, I'm not in it anymore,
Oh.
so.
okay, I see it. I see it says why headless.
Yeah. And then consume that with your single page application framework, right? And then the last one is JSS, which is SDK to build solutions with these modern UI frameworks. So currently, JSS, it supports React from the start. They have also Angular and Vue support recently. So before we dive in these options, I was wondering, has anybody ever built a single page application on Sitecore? Or just all?
That was like what?
But you're familiar with the pattern, just a different backend. All right, so here summarizes like these different approaches in terms of pros and cons. So using Sitecore Services client, it's basically just a data service, right? It doesn't run through Sitecore's rendering engine, which is really gonna limit you in terms of Sitecore features. People spend a lot of money on Sitecore, right? Because they want to use personalization, analytics, content testing, all the A/B testing, right? They want to do all those things, what Sitecore provides. But if you're just going to build a single-page application with the Sitecore Services client, you'll lose all these things because you're just pulling data from a JSON surface, not running through the rendering engine. So a lot of these issues are actually resolved when you use the Sitecore Experience Accelerator and their JSON data modeling tool. Because it is in Experience Editor, it runs through the rendering engine, right, from Sitecore. So it's going to give you a lot of other things, right? Analytics, personalization, content testing, all those things you can do just like with the regular page. The thing you'll lose is the Experience Editor, right? You're modeling JSON, so you're not, your users can't go in the Experience Editor, right, and just make edits like they're used to in that very user-friendly way. Then the other thing that you're losing is when you might have had the same experience when you write a single page application in Sitecore, really in .NET, really, right? Like the page gets rendered client side. So what you'll typically, you have this kind of dilemma, right? You're either gonna make a page fast initially from the start because you render it server side, or you're going to go with that single page application framework, right, where you can provide a really good user experience, right, say in case of product landing, hey, you can filter, do all those kinds of things, but it usually comes at the cost of the page being slower, right, because you render kind of an empty page initially, then you'll download your whatever the framework is, an Angular or React, then that has to start up, is to make JSON calls out again to a service, and then run it and render the page. Especially like in the mobile first world, right? Like this is even worse. Because like your phone is lower bandwidth, less CPU, so a lot of these single page applications typically perform pretty bad on whenever you use either one of those two approaches, right? So, and that's where JSS does things a lot different. So what JSS does is it actually, so you have your Angular or React application, it's actually hosted in Sitecore, and Sitecore is actually gonna render your Angular or React application server side through Node and then send it back. So it's just rendered server side, right? So things like caching you can use. There is no multiple round trips back and forth between the client and the server before the page can get rendered. You go to the page, gets rendered server side, sent to the client, and it's there. It also has a big SEO improvements. A lot of times when you have a single page application, right, it's very bare bones initially, right, and then all the JavaScript runs and the page renders, but all the search engine crawlers, they might not be able to understand that, right? They can't actually read the page. So imagine you have maybe a product landing page with all kinds of information on it. Like if the search engine crawlers can't crawl it, people are not going to find you in the first place. So that's not a big advantage. Then some things to call out in any approach, whether you serve the Sitecore Services client, the Experience Accelerator, or JavaScript services. You'll always have that JSON output, and everything is always security enabled, right? It's not gonna all of a sudden be able to pull back content that somebody doesn't have access to. Always uses the same Sitecore security model. All right.
Flagging again. I see it on my screen.
Oh, you see it on yours? Yeah, so the next screen, I'm going to show the pipeline, how JSS actually works, and then we can jump into the demo if that's going to hopefully work. So I really want to show it how it actually does it instead of just talking about it.
Trying to reconnect it.
Are there any questions so far while we pull up the next slide? Did it make sense? To lose you guys? Okay. Yeah, so here's basically how JSS works, right? So this is all the same as Sitecore, right? Request comes in, Sitecore picks it up, resolves it to the right item, gonna grab the layout. So and then once the item is resolved and the layout's resolved, then the rendering engine kicks in, right? It's gonna do all its same stuff, just like it's just a regular item. The ASP.NET is a rendering, right? So the rendering engine does all that. All personalization rules that are on the page are going to be applied. All the analytics is handled here, and then here is where it gets a dip, where the path changes. So with ASP.NET is basically the Sitecore MVC logic, right? That's going to render the request. Whereas here it's the layout surface. So this is actually the same layout surface that SXA uses as well. It's just configured differently. And then, so this layout surface has a JSON output. So here on the right, you'll see an example of what gets rendered by the layout surface. And then JSS picks that up and uses Node to render the page. So there's a few different application modes with JSS. Like at its core, JSS is really an SDK to develop single-page applications using React, Angular, or Vue. Like you don't even need Sitecore technically. If you like JSS, but you just want to build an app without Sitecore, you can do that too. So that's really that first mode. It's like the complete disconnected mode. It's like you don't need a Sitecore instance. You can mock some data, and JSS will render it. And where this gets very interesting too is a lot of times when you're working on a Sitecore project, right? At least almost everywhere I've seen is there's these set of front-end developers, right? And they typically don't like Sitecore.net or Visual Studio. You know, they don't like all that. They just have their own tools, use Sublime Text, whatnot. They just want to, you know, do their own thing, use their own tools, use something like React or Angular to build an app, and they don't want to be bothered by Sitecore or integrating in Sitecore, because this is not their skill set. And then typically you kind of get in this kind of odd setup where initially the front-end developer guys, they build some application, then they hand it off to the Sitecore team. They'll like integrate in Sitecore. Sometimes it doesn't work right. They go back and forth all the time, right? And then eventually it gets deployed. So what this does as well for you is with JSS, the front-end development team can really just build this app. And as long as they mock data right, you can just import it in Sitecore with the process. We'll see that during the demo as well. Then the next mode is the connected developer mode. So workflow is still the same. Developers write their application with like whatever they want to do, like React, like all their tools. They'll just use Sitecore as a service for content and layout data that gets consumed by JSS. And then the third one, that's the integrated mode. That's typically what you'll run it. That's how you run it from within Sitecore. So that's when you can use page editor, experience editor. You'll have your single page application run in Sitecore server side. So yeah, I think let's just jump over to the demo and just go take a quick look at it. So hopefully it's going to share, okay. All right, let me go here. So before you can really start here, there's a few dependencies. So since it uses Node to render it in integrated mode, you'll have that installed. Then there's a bunch of server components that you'll have to install. So those are just Sitecore update packages. So I already have that set up, since that's just, there's nothing really JSS specific about it. It's just, hey, install update package, get node installed, those kinds of things. And then there's a package on npm that you use to do all this, so you'll have to install that one as well. So here what we're going to do, I set up this site in IIS. So initially this is just going to be your default Sitecore site. And then we're going to deploy JSS in here. So the first thing we're going to do here is just get our JSS app. There's a few templates, starter templates that they have that you can start with. So I'm just going to start with one here, but you can start from scratch as well. It doesn't really matter. So here the JSS. I'm not sure if you can you guys see it? How do I? Better. So there's actually, so JSS, there's actually something I forgot to say. So it's still in preview. So when you're going to start playing with it, you're going to find that it's still a little bit rough around the edges here and there. Sometimes documentation is lacking a little bit. So for example, here in this install, there is actually one issue as well, that this thing errors out. So there's a workaround that they'll have to do now. So basically here what I'm doing, right, is I'm just installing the React JSS app from the template that's there. So just grabbed it, then you do an npm install. So this is going to run a little bit. So it's going to install all the dependencies that this requires, right? React uses Webpack, uses Babel. So there's a few dependencies that's going to install. You guys familiar with npm at all? Sure. Yeah, guys typically build Sitecore, things more server side with ASP.NET, sure.
Pretty traditional Sitecore.
Got it. Works well, right, for most things. Actually, once, like on the Sitecore Symposium last year, there were Alex Shiba and someone else from Sitecore. They were doing a demo with JSS, and they used React Native. So what that allows you to do is they had this single code base, and they used it for their app, for their site, as well as a mobile app. They just used the exact same code base to run a native phone app and a website. So there's really a lot of possibilities with JSS that you really just couldn't do before. All right. So this is installed, everything for that sample app. So now I'm starting JSS in disconnected mode. Actually in connected mode, sorry, but not in integrated mode. It's still running outside of Sitecore. So here it is gonna just start up the site. It takes a little bit the first time, but typically when people do React or Angular, there is this good development workflow, right, where you have watchers. So if you make a change, it can just compile that little change. So this experience that you're seeing here in terms of startup time, that's really because we're setting this up for the first time. The development experience is going to be very smooth. Like, to be honest, probably better than in Sitecore. Sometimes it's a pain, right? You make a change, like if the IS has to recycle, takes a long time to start again. So here, this is the React app. That's the advanced React app from the sample, just running outside of Sitecore, right? So what I was going to show now is, let's integrate this into Sitecore, right? And show, hey, experience editor works. Let's see all those things, and then take a quick look at the code. All right. So as I said, we're going to deploy this here. This is still the default site. So the command to do it is JSS setup. That's going to ask us for a few information about our site. So the path, I should have it here. The site, hold. Then the site name here. Then one more thing for JSS, if somebody thought, just like, hey, now I'm running this through Node, right? Like, what does that mean for my Sitecore licensing, right? I typically pay for Sitecore service, right? Whereas now I'm running this whole thing through Node, right? Is this just, can I just kind of get around the system here by just having a single Sitecore server and just using JSS for my page? So you can't do that. In order to use JSS, you'll have to have a consumption-based license for Sitecore, where you essentially just pay for the number of page views, the kind of original licensing that Sitecore does, where the server-based licensing, JSS is not going to accept that, just because you're really using Node and not Sitecore anymore. So there's this API key that you'll need to use. That's just when you deploy JSS. It's just the GUID of the Sitecore items. So, all right. So now I set it up. So what I'm going to do now in here, so I go in here. You can do this through, there is a command as well, but I wanted to show this file. So JSS, when you do this setup, is going to create this Sitecore patch file that you have to get in Sitecore, which basically, it's just a site definition essentially with a few more settings, so it knows how to render the page. And just like Sitecore itself, this is very extensible, right? Say you don't like something, how something renders, you can go extend it, right? This is a little bit hard. It's probably very hard to see. But here you'll have, the host, the root path, the start item, which database it runs on, like all that familiar stuff. So let me go copy this file. And I'm going to put that into my site. We can actually go and deploy this app and integrate it. So this is to build the whole app again. So again, this is not something you'll do every time, right? Like, hey, site's ready to be deployed, maybe to our QA environment, we're going to do this. but it's not part of your regular development workflow, right? So hey, you're gonna make a code change, gotta do all this, right? No, you probably just run it in connected mode until you're happy and you're ready to deploy this to a QA server. Maybe gonna take a quick look in Sitecore. So it's built the package now. It's using Sitecore ship by default to just upload the Sitecore package and get it into Sitecore. So once this is done, you should be able to see the site. Right, there it goes. All right, so it's deployed the application. Now let's go take a look. Actually, hold on. This uses a different URL. And so here's our site that we just deployed, running in Sitecore through Node, and then let's go here. So you'll just jump in Experience Editor, right? So here you'll see you can make code changes in Experience Editor just like you're used to. So this is really a big change in terms of the model, and I mean most likely where I think development's going to go in the next few years as well with Sitecore. I mean, we really expect people to move away from ASP.NET and get into this model. Like some competitors from Sitecore, Episerver has something very similar. I think Adobe is working on something because like it's these client-side technologies where, I mean, that's just where the market is shifting, as well as, you know, the ability to have like a mobile app and a responsive site sharing code. I mean, that's going to be a big driver as well, right? Just so many cost savings. So I think we have till 1:30, right? Let's maybe take a quick look at the code here. So here's the React code. So Is anybody familiar with React at least a little bit? I actually haven't used React that much either, but.
Started down the road.
So you'll see here is this React code right where this yeah, let me see.
Control mouse wheel should do it. On the left side.
Yeah, it's going.
Yeah.
So here you'll see kind of the familiar Sitecore code right with the placeholders, all in React code, and once it gets imported, Sitecore will, pick this up and do all its stuff. So yeah, that's. Take a quick look at the server.js. So here's this render view method. That's where the entry point by default where Sitecore is gonna go when it uses JSS to render the page. And then from there it's all React. So that's it. Are there any questions?
Could you take a previously disconnected JSS site and then using JSS? It seems like you could just put it in the Sitecore. Is it really that straightforward?
Yeah, I mean even if you have like an existing React app, right?
Okay.
You could go put it in Sitecore, but what you'll have to make sure is like what I showed before, where you had these placeholders, right? You probably won't have like placeholders in your React site, right? So you'll have to make some updates so it fits well within Sitecore. But yeah, that's absolutely, if you have existing
That's a big deal.
React or Angular apps, or Vue is still a lot newer, so you might not have as many. For Angular, it's only like 2+, so not the kind of legacy 1.x.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have those kinds of applications, you really should be able to retrofit them fairly easily.
That sounds excellent.
Any other questions?
Questions? All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Yeah, you can just set that down. I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. No. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
This meetup seems to be doing well. Like the Chicago site for User Group, I don't think they met in months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know.
I thought we were struggling.
No, Rick, you guys are doing great.
That's good. All right, let's go to my desktop.
Right.
I'll just give some parting thoughts. So, heard from two great speakers today. We had, we just finished up with the introduction to Sitecore's JavaScript services, and then we talked about practical machine learning use cases in Sitecore. So again, technical topics, but next month we're going to go back and do business and marketing topics. You get the, oh, here it is. That way people can actually hear me. Sorry about that.
They can hear you. Hi.
They can hear me?
You're pretty loud.
Sorry, what did you say?
Good.
You're pretty loud.
I am pretty loud? Okay. So next month, business tech and marketing topics. So are there any things off the top of your head that you want to cover within that vein? Have anything? Say it now. If not, I'll poll the group or just come up with something. Or forever hold your peace. Is that what you said? Okay, cool. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. We need you all to come to these, obviously, to support these. Going forward, I'm really glad that I keep butchering your name. Yaroon?
Yeah.
Yaroon.
Got it.
Yaroon. I want to say that like 1,000 times. Not creepily, but I'm going to say it just to get it implanted in my brain. But Yaroon was very gracious and yeah, I know. Yeah. To give a talk, it's one of the things over the years has been trying to get other people outside of Rounded Cube give talks at the meetups, and for Yaroon to give the talk is very good. I appreciate it so much, so thank you. And going forward, if there's any talk that you want to speak about, please raise your hand. These are great opportunities for not only the meetup for everyone else to learn, but also for if anybody wants to become a Sitecore MVP, whether that be on the digital strategy side or technical side, these are opportunities that contribute to that type of recognition. So it's a really good thing to include in that portfolio of work. Okay. All right. We'll be back here. I don't know if it's going to be at this space or another location next month, but yeah, so appreciate you all for coming. So thank you so much.